All right, wonderful. Well, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to an episode of Success Principles. I'm Matt Jodwin, and I'm excited that you're here. It's great to see everybody. Awesome. We got waiting room open. Perfect. Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. I'm looking forward to connecting with some awesome people. So before we get started, out of curiosity, is anybody have any wins or awarenesses that they care to share?
I'll share.
Janelle, take the floor.
This is okay. You have to bear with me because there's a bit of a background story here.
Let's hear it.
So recently with our business, we've been deciding to make some changes and give some of my responsibilities to one of our employees. And I had a conversation with Matt about this on Tuesday, and I was feeling like I had mixed emotions about it because this is a year in the making of me creating this cleaning business. And I'm just a little bit like scared to give it away to somebody else, and scared that my baby will fall apart. And then what am I going to do? And then we kind of talked about it, and like, well, I'm going to get more clients and I'm going to start doing the management side of things, which is what we initially had wanted to do. And we had talked about how create space for the universe to give you what you're asking for. So we made a decision in that call. I made the decision that okay, this is what we're going to do. Literally started training the following day. And then as far as it's been a little bit chaotic, there's been a lot going on. I've been a little bit overwhelmed. But the importance of gratitude, right? Like that really helps. And I have a really great partner who's just see that I'm overwhelmed and steps in, and she just delegated the shit out of everything today and took care of it, which is amazing. And just it's kind of coming full circle for me, like all the things that we've learned. I mean, I know these little things happen and you kind of you start to have that faith and stuff, but really the gratitude and the visualization and making decisions and all of that is sort of in today is coming full circle, where in the last 24 hours, I got 2 new cleaning clients. And then as I was talking about this, and I didn't do anything, by the way, to do this other than I changed my affirmations and I affirmed that I'm going to start getting clients easily. And anyways, 2 new clients. And then today I get an email from someone I talked to a while ago about a future managing her Airbnb, and she's reached out to us all this out of the blue. And then I have an existing client that's got some new Airbnbs, so he wants us to go clean those, and that just happened an hour ago. And then talking to Rochelle, saying this is blowing my mind. She's my business partner, and she said, oh, we just got another long-term cleaning client. I'm like, what? So 5 clients in 24-hour time frame, because I've made a decision, I changed my affirmations, and I just I just had faith that it was going to happen.
That's amazing, Janelle. Way to go. So I was just going to ask, and maybe you just answered it there in the last sentence or two, but what do you think was the shift or the catalyst to produce that result?
Decision.
The decision. Interesting. Mm-hmm. I often say that, there's a couple of ways to shift your energy or to change what vibration you're on. And if you listen to Bob Proctor, he'll say that your imagination, and the moment that you start to imagine the good that you desire, you get on the same frequency of your goal. But the other way, and I think this is even more powerful, is when you make a decision, like a real true decision. You feel that, don't you? It changes your energy and it changes what you attract. That's amazing, Janelle. Well, congratulations. That's awesome. I'm excited for you.
It's really mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing is what it is. I mean, we all know this, but when you're in it, it's it's unbelievable.
And it happens quickly, doesn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. Way to go. Well, good for you, Janelle. I'm excited for you, my friend. Awesome. Anybody else? Any wins or insights? Any awarenesses or shifts that they've experienced in the last few days, a week or so?
Yeah, I'll say something. I started doing the gratitudes recently.
Right.
I found them quite awesome, actually. like you said, it's kind of an intellectual process to begin with. It's hard to think about, hard to find things you are grateful for, but once you start doing it every day, now I'm just noticing things that, hey, I'm grateful for that. Like, it's just starting to come easy, and I think that's a win for sure.
Isn't that interesting, huh? That's amazing, Skylar. I appreciate you sharing that. And it's so true. You know, when you start to develop the habit of looking for things to be grateful for, you're going to start to notice them all throughout your day. And man, I'll tell you, it just changes your life experience, doesn't it? It just begins to change the way that you feel as you go through your day. And really, I mean, that's what most people are searching for. That's what people are looking for, is to change the way that they feel. They think that a goal or some distant future or some achievement will accomplish that for them, but we can do that right now by shifting what we're focusing on. So you're starting to notice that you're finding more and more things to be grateful for?
It's becoming a lot easier for me, yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
And yeah, I start looking for them, actually. It's not just noticing, I actively look for things to be grateful for. Some of them I feel that emotion behind too, and like we've said, if you put motion behind it, it helps for sure.
I love it. Awesome, Skylar. Well, thanks for sharing, man. Keep it up. That's great.
I have that same thing to say about gratitude. And when we started doing our gratitude lists and sharing them together, I think I've said this before, but I started to look around the room. And so I was looking for tangible items that I could be happy for or happy about. What shifted was when I got emotional about it, and I made it into things that weren't visible, right? Because you can buy all the things if you have the money. And I know that, you know, good finances and things like that are stuff we're all working towards and that we want, but at the same time, those real gratitude things that you just can't seem to touch, they're just all around us, like, and things that we don't have control over, like nature and stuff like that. My shift the last few months has probably been nature and the connectivity that I'm feeling just in like every aspect of my life, even down to like using linen on my bed instead of like, you know, things that are man-made, and everything that I can have around me that's from the earth, the better. It changes the way I feel and think. And that's all.
That's all. And that's all. That's pretty amazing though. I love that.
I would turn my screen on, but like I'm kind of been secluded into my bedroom because I have workers here, and it's just not an environment I want to share right now.
Hey, it's all good. Well, I appreciate you sharing, Tamara. And I would agree 100%. You know, so oftentimes I think that we think gratitude has to be some big achievement or, you know, some big finish line or something like that. And the truth is, it's like, I find more things to be grateful for in the small things throughout the day that we can appreciate and allow into our hearts. And that just, like I said, improves the quality of our day, improves the quality of our life. And nature, specifically, and time in nature, man, that's a powerful energy source, isn't it?
Totally. Yeah.
100%. And absolutely changes the way that I feel too, Tamara, and the way that I think. So I would second that. I'll get behind that for sure. 100%. Awesome, you guys. Well, it's great to hear. Thanks for sharing, everybody. Lately, we've been talking about faith. Okay, we've been talking about how you get what you believe, right? The challenge, of course, with that is that most of our beliefs, like 98% of our beliefs, occur below the level of conscious awareness. So it makes it pretty difficult to work with. And like Carl Jung said that, you know, until you make the unconscious known, it will control your life and you'll just call it fate. So last week I had suggested that we take personal inventory of some of our beliefs. And how do you do that? Well, I mean, there's probably lots of ways. You know, we talked about observing our behavior and observing our habits, but we talked about how just grabbing a blank piece of paper and a pen and journaling or writing on a specific topic or a theme will allow some of those beliefs to bubble to the surface. You might be surprised at some of the beliefs that are buried down there, you know? And if you find one that's either limiting, disempowering, or negative, you want to do everything within your power to get that out of there. And the reason is because you get what you believe, good or bad. Remember, anything that the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. It works just as well for the good as it does for the bad, and vice versa. So how do you change a belief? Well, one, start with an awareness. How the hell are you going to change something that you're not aware of, right? Then accept the new idea that maybe that's not true. You know, not every belief, not every thought I have, not every idea that I possess is accurate. We tend to think that they are. Then you want to act as if the new belief is true, and then affirm, affirm, affirm. And the reason why we want to do that is we want to drill that new belief into our mind, drill that new belief into the subconscious. And the moment that that belief lands in your subconscious mind, it's a done deal. The moment that new belief lands in your subconscious mind, it's done. You know, they say that when you change your thoughts, you change your life. And then that's true. Okay. But really, it would probably be more accurate to say that when you change your beliefs, you change your life. Or when you change your paradigm, you change your life. Okay. It just so happens that your thoughts are a pretty good place to start. Okay. Now, today, we're going to be talking about persistence. Persistence. Now, really, persistence is just another word for faith. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, you wouldn't persist in something unless you had faith that it was possible or that you were capable of achieving it. So persistence and faith are pretty much the same thing. Now, Napoleon Hill says that persistence is a necessary factor. Okay, it's a necessary ingredient. And he says that persistence, it's based on two very distinct things. Okay, the two things that make up persistence are, one, the power of the will. Okay, not necessarily willpower as in like, not eating the donuts at the office kind of thing. That's a little bit different. We're talking about the power of the will and desire. Persistence is made up of two things, the power of the will and desire. Now, Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, he says that desire is the starting point of all achievement, right? And he compares desire a little bit to like a flame. And he says that just as a large amount of fire creates a large amount of heat, a large amount of desire creates a large amount of result. Okay. But sometimes, you ever notice that sometimes you kind of need to protect that desire? You kind of need to protect that fire. You know, it's almost like Survivor. You guys remember that show Survivor? I don't know if that's still on. Is that still on? Yeah. That's like one of the longest running like TV programs in the history of TV, isn't it? It's crazy. Anyway, that was a great show. I remember back in the day, like having like Survivor parties, and we get all our friends together and everybody hanging out in the basement and watching Survivor. I mean, that was awesome. But if you remember, like when they get a fire going in some of those remote places, they had to do everything in their power to protect that, didn't they? I mean, that fire was like a matter of life and death. They got to keep it burning. They got to stoke it. They got to feed it. Their survival depended on it. Now, I've often said that you have to do the same with your goals too. You have to do the same with that desire. You got to guard it. You got to protect it. Don't let anybody steal your fire. Don't let anybody piss on your fire. You know, you got to make sure that that thing keeps burning. You also got to stoke it and feed it. You know, how do you feed a desire, or what do you feed a desire? Well, just as food nourishes the body, our thoughts nourish our mind, don't they? So we got to be feeding that desire thoughts that support our goal. Thoughts of faith, thoughts of hope, thoughts of positivity, and keep that fire burning within. Now, the second ingredient, okay, according to Napoleon Hill, the second ingredient of persistence is the power of will. Now, will is the ability to focus on your goal and maintain that image on the screen of your mind at all times. To hold that image, to focus on what it is that you want. Okay, it's the willingness to persist, even in the middle of difficulty, challenges, and obstacles. The truth is that, you know, in my experience and through observation, I've noticed, and maybe you guys would agree with this, that most people aren't even willing to try, to be honest with you. And most people aren't willing to persist more than maybe like 2 or 3 attempts. You guys ever notice that? Maybe they give it one shot and then it comes back. I tried that one time, it didn't work. Right? But here's the thing, you start to look at some of the world's most successful people, and what you see is a story of persistence. Some of the world's most successful people, like we talk about Thomas Edison. You know, the legend has it that, you know, he attempted 10,000 tries to invent the light bulb. Or another one is Howard Schultz, who you guys might be familiar with, his business Starbucks. Well, apparently Howard Schultz approached 242 banks looking for his first loan. 242 banks looking for a loan. He must have hit up every bank along the West Coast between like Canada and the US. That's crazy. Or one of my personal favorites is Jack Canfield. Jack Canfield, of course, wrote the book series Chicken Soup for the Soul. And apparently Jack Canfield was denied or rejected by 130 different publishers. I mean, what? 130 different publishers before that was approved, before it was picked up, before somebody thought, well, yeah, maybe this is a good idea. Let's run with it. You know, I put myself in that situation, and I wonder at what point I would start to think, well, maybe this is a terrible idea. And I'm not confident that I would survive 242 rejections. I don't know. Hopefully I don't have to find that out. Crazy, isn't it? Or J.K. Rowling's, you know, the author of Harry Potter. You know, she was rejected 25 times before a publisher picked up that story. Now she's gone on to, you know, that's one of the best-selling book series of all time. Crazy, right? You know, I read an interesting book a while back. This is a couple of years ago now. It's called Grit by Angela Duckworth. I have it right here. Grit by Angela Duckworth. And super interesting book. Angela Duckworth did something that I thought was really interesting. She's got a scientific background. And so she did a number of different scientific studies, okay, where she looked at some of the world's most successful people. She looked at high achievers, okay, so people in like West Point Military Academy, people in the Navy SEALs, people at Princeton and Stanford and places of that nature. She even looked at people who were doing spelling bees, which I don't know about you guys, but I think that would be pretty challenging for me, okay? But she looked at all of these different high achievers, and she wanted to know, like, you know, when people get to that level, what they realize pretty quickly is just getting accepted to Princeton, like that's a hoop and a bunch of challenges that you need to get just to get accepted. But that's where you start. That's just the beginning. That's not the end. That's not the finish line. That's just the beginning. And once you're in Princeton, that's when the challenges come. And she said that even these people who were in Princeton and the Navy SEALs and West Point Academy, she says these high achievers, she said there were some that succeeded and others that failed. Some that went on to win and others that quit. And she wanted to know, what's the difference? What's the difference between these two groups? And what she found through her scientific studies was that it's not necessarily the people with the best backgrounds, the best families. Okay, it's not even the smartest or the strongest, the biggest or the fastest. She found that the determining factor between success and failure was the secret ingredient was grit. Hence the title of her name, or the book's name. The secret ingredient was persistence. Now, I was flipping through this book in preparation for this call, and I came across a quote by Pete Carroll. And I thought this was quite fitting considering the conversations that we've been having lately. Pete Carroll, for those of you who aren't familiar, was the head coach, maybe still is, of the Seattle Seahawks. Of course, the Seattle Seahawks are NFL Super Bowl champions. Okay. And there's a quote in here where he says that, personally, I've learned that if you create a vision for yourself and stick with it, you can make amazing things happen in your life. My experience is that once you have done the work to create the clear vision, it is the discipline and effort to maintain that vision that can make it all come true. Okay. He says the two go hand in hand. The moment that you've created that vision, you're on your way. But it's the diligence with which you stick to that vision that allows you to get there. It's the diligence of sticking with that vision that allows you to get there. Okay, it's the grit. It's the will to be able to hold on to what it is that you want, to focus your mind on what it is that you're going after. It's that persistence. Okay. Now, Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, he says that one of the major causes of failure is a lack of persistence. Makes sense. He says, without persistence, you'll be defeated even before you start. Even before you start. Without persistence, you'll be defeated even before you start. But with persistence, you will win. Now, that's a pretty powerful statement. Makes you think, doesn't it? Without persistence, you'll be defeated before you even start. Dang. But with persistence, different story. Well, I guess the question is, well, how do you get persistence? Now, Napoleon Hill says that persistence is a state of mind that can be developed and it can be cultivated. Sometimes people think that, you know, like Mel Robbins said the other day, that people think that it's like a personality trait. But the truth is it's a skill that can be developed. So how do you develop it? Well, Napoleon Hill goes into detail in this in the chapter on persistence in Think and Grow Rich. And he identifies 8 key steps to developing persistence. So if you guys have a pen and paper handy, you guys might want to write these down and just keep track of them. Okay. But the first step to developing persistence is deafness of purpose. Surprise, surprise. What's your goal? What are you aiming at? Where are you going? What's the reward? Okay. The second one is desire. Desire is the starting point of all achievement. You know, got to keep that fire going, baby. We talked before about Hebb's Law. You know, continuing to identify and focus on all of the positive benefits of the reward. You know, if you focus on the sacrifices and the challenges and the things that you got to give up and the discipline that's going to be required to achieve your goal, well, that's not very inspiring, is it? Just reminds you of all the pain that you've got to endure. So focusing on that positive outcome, focusing on the goal, looking where you want to go. Okay. The third ingredient or step to developing persistence is self-reliance. Or maybe you want to call that self-confidence. Mel Robbins, like I said the other day, I love her definition of self-confidence, that it's not a personality trait, it's a skill. Right? And it's the willingness to try. You can still feel a little bit nervous, you can be anxious, you can be fearful, you can have doubt, but it's that willingness to try. And I think that it also speaks to the power of affirmations. Napoleon Hill will say that, you know, that's one of the only ways to develop the emotion of faith is through affirmations. Okay. The fourth ingredient is organized plans. Organized plans. Now, it's interesting because I shared that comment in the group chat about plans and about organized plans. And it goes on to say here, it says, even though they may be weak and entirely impractical, organized plans encourage persistence. Even if they're weak, even if they're impractical, it encourages persistence. And I think that kind of supports that idea that I was saying the other day, that, you know, what it does is it starts to develop that confidence a little bit. You start to see a bit of a path to success, even if you don't see the entire thing. And the truth is that as you walk, that path will appear, right? Like Rumi said, that faith is the ability to take that first step, even if you can't see the entire staircase. Start moving towards what you want, and things have a funny way of aligning and coming together, don't they? Right. The fifth step towards developing persistence is accurate knowledge. Accurate knowledge. What does that mean? Well, in the past, I've found, and maybe you guys can relate to this, that, you know, a lot of times I've tried to figure things out on my own, or rely on trial and error. And I'll tell you, that just takes way too much time, doesn't it? And one of my favorite, most powerful quotes that I've ever heard from Tony Robbins is, success leaves clues. Success leaves clues. And if you find somebody who's doing what you're doing, want to be doing, and you start to take similar actions, similar steps, read what they're reading, watch what they're watching, listen to what they're doing and listening to, you're likely to get similar results, aren't you? But it also speaks to the importance of studying. You know, for a large portion of my life, you know, I would have liked to have earned more money. I would have liked to have done better financially. But if you ask me, well, what books are you reading about money? Books? Reading? I didn't do it. So how the hell am I supposed to do that if I'm not acquiring, you know, accurate knowledge? It's no surprise that I wasn't. Okay, so accurate knowledge. Number 6, steps to achieving persistence is cooperation. Cooperation from other people, essentially. Okay. And now the truth is, you know, you hear that phrase sometimes that self-made millionaire, you know, self-made man or woman. And the truth is that nobody who is successful is ever self-made. It always comes with the support of a team or a group of people. Even if you attempted to do it on your own, like, you need the cooperation of clients, customers, the public that you're serving, nobody's self-made. You need the cooperation from other people. Okay. Now, that's one of those things that, you know, they'll teach you in school, that you got to take tests on your own and you got to work by yourself and you got to do all those sorts of things. That's another thing that we need to unlearn. Get into the habit of reaching out, asking for help, supporting one another, finding people who complement your skill set. Finding people who are better at some areas than you might be. Surrounding yourself with those people to fill in the gaps. You can't be expected to do it all on your own, nor should you. Okay, so cooperation. Number 7, okay, is willpower, or the power of will. Now, like I said, this isn't, you know, denying yourself sweets necessarily, or, you know, not having cookies at the dessert table or anything like that. This is about the ability to focus your mind, the ability to focus on your goal, despite what's going on around you, not to give any attention or energy to the noise. Okay, to focus your mind on what it is that you want, to create that vision, and then, like Pete Carroll said here, to hold that vision on the screen of your mind at all times. And the last one, number 8, is habit. Habit. In fact, he says that persistence is the direct result of habit. Well, what does he mean by that? Well, I had a conversation with somebody earlier this week, and you know, this individual is going through a lot of growth, a lot of changes, and you know, sometimes things come up that are sometimes just, quite frankly, challenges. Okay, and this person asked me, when do we get to the point where we can just kind of like, where it's easier? Okay, and I had to think about that. I thought, well, you know, here's the thing, it's about perpetual growth, isn't it? You know, there's that old adage that if you're not growing, you're dying. There ain't no third direction. You know, so I kind of thought about that for a little bit, and I said, well, it's always about perpetual growth. But as you grow, the things that were hard at one time, you know, you will expand your capacity, and over time, that won't be as difficult anymore. There'll be other challenges, don't get me wrong, and bigger challenges perhaps, but the things that seem challenging a month ago or a year ago, you'll just be used to those ones now. But I started to think about it more, and I had a better answer. Okay, and it kind of ties into his comment on habit. And I think that to a certain extent, you work on developing small habits that support your success, and you rest in the habit. Rest in the habits. What do I mean by that? Well, habits, by definition, are unconscious behaviors. They require less energy and less effort. So you work on developing the small habits that support your success or that lead to your success. And then once those become a habit, you move on to developing another small habit, and another small habit, and another small habit that build on one another. Those small habits are things that don't require a ton of energy or a ton of effort. James Clear in Atomic Habits, he said that most people don't rise to the level of your goals. You sink to the level of your systems, or sink to the level of your habits. Put another way, you know, truth be told, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Okay, but I've observed in my own behavior that it's easier for me if I just do the same thing at the same time, day in and day out. What do I mean by that? Well, it's like I work out at the same time every day when I work out. Okay, when my kids come home from school, I have a routine or a ritual where we do an afternoon snack after school, and I make their lunches for the next day, and then it's done. While I'm doing that, I make coffee for the morning and set up my lemon water for the morning too. I'm doing all of those things at the same time, so I don't have to think about it. I'm doing my food prep the same time on the same day, laundry at the same time on the same day. Like for me, routine is ritual. And those are the things that set me up for success. Those are the things that, you know, when I get up in the morning, I'm hitting green lights right from the jump. Set yourself up to hit those green lights. Okay. That's what I think, that once it's a habit, then you can kind of rest in that a little bit. You don't have to spend as much energy thinking about deciding and acting. It just happens automatically. It becomes a part of just what you do, or maybe just part of who you are. But it also says, he says, even fear can be overcome with habit. Even fear can be overcome with habit. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Now, to be honest with you guys, this is one of the main reasons that I even talk about or address applied faith, okay, is for this exact reason here, okay? If you're to listen to Bob Proctor, and you believe anything that he says that the root of all fear comes from what? The root of all fear comes from ignorance. Ignorance.
Yeah, not understanding, right?
Right. You see where I'm going with this, Tamara. So he says that the root of all fear stems from ignorance. Not that you're stupid or anything of that nature. It's just not knowing. Ignorant of the facts. Okay. And he says that the opposite of ignorance is understanding or awareness. And that quote that I shared the other day is, in all things gain understanding. Well, you might ask yourself, well, understanding of what? Well, understanding of energy, understanding of, universal laws, understanding of how these things work. So that when it happens, you're not surprised. You know how it works. You have understanding. Now, we know that everything is energy, okay? Albert Einstein said, everything is energy, that's just all there is to it, okay? And we know that, just give me a quick second here. We know that all energy operates on a specific frequency, okay? And all energy operates according to law. Now, let's just imagine for a moment that let these lines represent frequencies, okay? Now, there's infinite levels of frequencies, infinite. Okay, and let's imagine for a moment that this down here is like water, okay? And water, it operates on its own frequency and it vibrates on its own frequency, okay? And all these little particles of water down here, okay? Now, let's imagine for a moment that these little particles of water had a goal to become like a cloud in the sky. They want to become steam and be a cloud way up here in the sky, okay? Big cloud. Cool. Well, let me ask you, what does that water need to do in order to become a cloud? What does that water need to do in order to become steam or become to evaporate and become a cloud in the sky?
Its frequency.
Sorry, say that one more time, Janelle.
Change its frequency.
It's got to change its frequency, right? It's got to change its vibration, doesn't it? Let me ask you, can this water continue to remain on the same frequency and the same vibration as like room temperature and still expect to become a cloud? No? Are you guys all in agreement with that? Sure. Okay, well, what about this one? Let me ask you, can this water, can it wait until it becomes a cloud and then change its frequency? Can it wait until it becomes a cloud in the sky and then decide, okay, well, now it's safe to make some change. Now it's safe to change my vibration, to change my frequency? No, of course not. And it's just like that with us too. We need to be willing to make that change and to change our state, to change our energy, to change our vibration, to change our frequency before we can achieve our goal, not after. Now, this is an easy mistake to make, and one that I've made countless times in my life, okay? Now, here's the challenge. Let's imagine for a moment that this is, let's forget the analogy of water for a second, okay? And let's imagine that this is a radio station, C95, okay, in Saskatoon. You guys listen to like the best of Bieber, okay? I love Justin Bieber, okay? Let's say you guys are tuned in listening to Justin Bieber and C95, okay? But you find out, a friend texts you and says, hey, check out Rock 102 up here. Rock 102, they're playing a little bit of Led Zeppelin. Yeah, who doesn't love Led Zeppelin, hey? Letting the lead out. And let's imagine for a moment that, like, you guys remember back in the day, those old car radios, or maybe you guys have like a old transistor radio and it's got the dial on it with the little red needle and it goes across the screen. Okay, well, let's imagine for a moment that we're on C95, but we want to go listen to Rock 102. Well, what happens the moment that you turn the dial away from C95? What do you experience? What do you get?
Static.
Static. Oh, right. Now, the challenge is that oftentimes when people start to make those changes, when they start to leave their current state or their homeostasis or their habit nature, where they find themselves today, the first thing that they're met with, just like on the radio station, is static, noise, disruption, chaos. You think, oh shit, this is terrible. Well, what's up with this? This is not good. This is not good. Okay, I want to go, bring me back to Bieber. Okay, right. But what happens if you continue to persist and you keep turning that dial and keep turning that dial and keep turning that dial? Eventually, you're going to hit what? Rock 102 and the beautiful melodies of Led Zeppelin, right? The challenge is that it's always messy in the middle. It's always messy in the middle, okay? In fact, there's a book, I'll hold this one up for you here too. One of my all-time favorite books, if you guys don't own this book or haven't read it yet, I highly suggest picking it up. It's called U Squared by Price Pritchett. U Squared by Price Pritchett. This is an extremely powerful book. It's about 33 pages long. You can read it in one sitting, unless you have young kids, and then it'll take you a year, okay? But this book is unbelievably powerful, and Price Pritchett uses the analogy of an operating room. And Price Pritchett says that in the middle, an operation looks like a fucking murder scene. It looks like somebody was torn apart. Okay, everything looks messy in the middle. It's like that for your goals. It's like that if you're cleaning your office or cleaning your room. Can any of you guys relate to, you know, cleaning out a storage room or a garage or your bedroom or something of that nature? You know, in order to get it clean, oftentimes what you have to do is what? Take everything out of the shelves, everything out of the drawers. You got, you know, stuff all over the place. Maybe you got your shoebox of life sitting there on the floor, looking through old pictures and old knickknacks and keepsakes. If you were to stop there and look at the room, it would look like a disaster zone. But you got to persist to the other side. You got to keep working through that. Okay. Well, I mean, without that, the temptation is to just go back to what you're used to. Now, the truth is that in order to get to Rock 102, or in order to become a cloud, or in order to achieve your goals, we're going to have to let go. Let go of what? Well, let go of some of those thoughts. Let go of some of those beliefs. Let go of some of those actions, okay? Some of those habits. We're going to have to let go of some of those, maybe it's people, or maybe it's even places. Maybe it's certain like foods or substances. We're going to have to let go of some of those things, perhaps all of them. The challenge is that as human beings, people aren't typically very good at letting go. Like Janelle wisely pointed out, sometimes you got to make room for the good that you desire. You got to open up space for the universe to deliver. You got to let go of those things. You got to let go of what you have to make room for what you want. But typically speaking, most people aren't very good at letting go. No, there's a quote in Think and Grow Rich here by Wallace D. Wattles that jumped out at me. Okay, Wallace D. Wattles is, of course, the author of The Science of Getting Rich, which is another powerful book. I probably had to read it 3 or 4 times before I even understood what the hell he was trying to say, but great read nonetheless. But Wallace D. Wattles says that there are many ideas in your mind which you have outgrown, which from force of habit, you still permit to dictate the actions of your life. Cease all of this and abandon everything that you have outgrown. Cease this and abandon everything that you have outgrown. Isn't that the truth, though? Some things we do just out of force of habit. Some people we're friends with just because we've been friends with them since high school. Some foods and some substances we ingest just because, well, that's just what we're in the habit of. Some thoughts and some beliefs we have and continue to harbor just because that's in our habit nature. We have a pattern of thinking and a pattern of belief and a pattern of behavior, don't we? And some of those things we've got to let go. Now, the truth is that sometimes when you let go of those, okay, it's going to be scary. It's going to be fearful to step into the unknown, isn't it? 100%. In fact, one of the things that I've said before, and I'll mention again, is that one of the scariest days of your life will be the day that you begin to get everything that you want. One of the scariest days of your life will be the day that you begin to get everything you want, because it's going to force you to give up some of the things that you're used to. It's also going to come, sometimes it comes in the form of a challenge. Sometimes there's a woman by the name of Jen Sincero. Jen Sincero wrote a couple of books. One in particular is called You're a Badass at Making Money. And Jen Sincero tells this really great story about how she set her intention, okay, that she wanted to earn X amount of dollars and she wanted to travel to Australia. Okay, well, at the time she was broke. She wasn't earning hardly any money. And she had this job that she hated. And I think it was within about 48 hours, she got fired from her job. And thought, holy shit, this is not what I was expecting. This is not how I anticipated that. But the universe has a kind of sick sense of humor sometimes, doesn't it? A funny way of delivering what you're asking for, but in an unexpected package. And sometimes it comes in the form of a challenge. Now, the truth is that a lot of times, anytime you're going to be leaving what you're used to and stepping into the unknown, there's going to be fear involved, isn't there? Fear of what? Well, what are some things that people are afraid of? What are some things that Napoleon Hill cites as things that people are afraid of, or some of the fears?
Failure, criticism.
Failure, criticism, yeah.
Illness, loss of love.
Somebody did their additional homework, eh? Right. So Napoleon Hill states 7 basic fears. Napoleon Hill says there's 7 basic fears. The fear of poverty, the fear of loss of love, the fear of ill health, the fear of old age, the fear of loss of liberty, okay? The fear of criticism, right? Lumped in there, you might suggest or might say the fear of failure too. Now, you might want to ask yourself, last week we asked ourselves a couple of questions, and another question you might want to consider asking yourself, and maybe even write this down and give yourself some time to ponder, is what's my relationship with fear? What's my relationship with fear? Now, we all have a relationship with fear, whether you realize it or not. And in some cases, that relationship or that fear might signal, okay, retreat, pull back, stop while we're ahead. I don't know. It's been really interesting. I shared with you guys in the group chat that I'm going through an experience right now where we're in the process of selling our house in Saskatchewan. Okay, and it's really interesting because I'm able to observe a lot of things that are coming up for me. And I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't, a little bit of like anxiety around the sale of this house and the sale of this property. And what I noticed was this is one of the very first times that fear signaled to me, okay, this is a great thing. This is movement. This is a shift. We can't stay where we are with what we got and still expect to achieve our goal. This is movement. This fear just signals a little bit of that movement. Now, I was pondering a comment that one of my mentors said to me a number of years ago, and this always rolled around in my head, and I'm going to share this with you. He said that faith and fear cannot coexist in the heart at the same time. Faith and fear cannot coexist in the heart at the same time. Okay. Now, when I heard that initially, I took that to mean, well, when you're in a state of fear or worry or doubt or anxiety, to do everything that you can to focus on the positive and to focus on the good things or the outcome. Okay. And truth be told, I tried my best to focus on those things, but I always had this like undercurrent or this emotion of fear. And I am sure that each and every single one of us have experienced that. It's a feeling, isn't it? That fear. And I realized something just on Tuesday of this week. Okay, this was a realization awareness that I made on Tuesday. And that's that if I was experiencing that fear in that moment, even if I was trying to replace that with thoughts of faith and thoughts of positivity and thoughts of hope, that wasn't real faith. Remember, faith is an emotion. Faith is a belief. And a belief is an emotion that resides in your subconscious mind. So faith and fear cannot coexist in the heart at the same time. Why am I sharing this with you? Well, because this has been one of the very first times that I've really experienced that detachment and that full-on faith, where this huge process, okay, the sale of our house, like, I don't know, this has actually been quite a challenging situation. And I'm totally like not emotionally affected by it in the least. This is a $700,000 house that we're trying to sell. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, this is crazy. That's the most amount of money I've ever seen or touched. And I can't believe it's even worth that much as the property prices have improved since we purchased it. But to be able to rest in that faith and remove myself from that emotion is kind of like what Skylar was saying before, where, it just feels better to tap into that emotion. Now, why am I able to rest in that faith? Because I think that I'm finally, after all of this time and all of this repetition, beginning to internalize and embody the things that we're talking about, that understanding, that awareness. There's a very powerful parable that I've shared with you guys before, but I'll share it quickly again too. And it's the story of the Chinese farmer. This Chinese farmer has a horse that runs away, and the neighbor comes over and he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." And the Chinese farmer says, "Well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad." You know, the next day, the horse comes back with a few of its friends. He's got a couple extras, and the farmer's neighbor says, "Oh, that's unbelievable. Look at you." And he said, "Well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad." Okay. Well, the next day after that, the farmer's son is trying to tame some of these wild horses, and he gets bucked off and he breaks his leg. Again, the neighbor is standing there and says, "Oh man, that's terrible. I can't believe this guy's luck." And the farmer, you know, in habit form says, "Well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad." And wouldn't you know what? The very next day, the army comes through town to enlist soldiers. And because this poor young boy had just broken his leg, well, he doesn't have to go off to war. He's exempt from the war, from what's it called, inscription or whatever it's called. And he says, "Wow, maybe," he says, "that's unbelievable. Look at your luck." And the farmer says, "Well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad." Now that story has been extremely powerful for my wife and I. And we reference that weekly, if not more. Okay. Now, part of this whole process, I've realized that, you know what, looking back on my past and looking back at all of the challenges that we've gone through, all of those challenges just led to something that were better than I believe possible anyway. All of those things that seemed like challenges actually resulted in something that was actually a real positive. So we were talking about this on like Tuesday, and I said to her, I was like, so maybe it's not, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. Maybe it's just, it's all good. It's all good. And if it's not good yet, I just need to keep turning the dial, keep persisting through the static until we get to the good. I've got to keep maintaining that, keep focusing on what we want until we get there. There is no losing. I either win or I learn. I either win or I learn. There is no scenario where we lose. Now, this isn't something that I've just thought anymore. This is something that where now I feel on an emotional level. And let me tell you, that makes all the difference in the world. Now, I'm not a particularly religious person, okay? But I do think that there is some wisdom in the Bible. Now, think what you will about the Bible. It's not for me to say. But in the Bible, it says the phrase, "Do not be afraid," 365 times. Do not be afraid. 365 times. Think there's something to that phrase? Maybe. Maybe it's resting in that understanding. Maybe there's something to be said about gaining that awareness of how these things work, of how the universe unfolds, and the power of letting go and making room for the good that we want. Okay. A couple other points here that I wanted to make real quick. You guys got 2 more minutes? 2 more minutes? Okay, beautiful. You know, like I said, that that story or that parable of the farmer has been a powerful one for us. And I think I finally just realized that as long as you continue to persist and to focus on what it is that you want, you can't fail. The only way that you fail is if you quit or give up or allow yourself to get caught in the negativity or you internalize defeat. Temporary defeat is not the same as failure. Temporary challenges are not the same as failure. Now, another question that I want you guys to ask yourself, and maybe write this one down to allow yourself to ponder, is what's my relationship with failure? What's my relationship with failure? Now, the reason that's a powerful question is we all have a relationship with failure too, whether we realize it or not. And for me, my relationship with failure in the past, get this, was, well, if I don't try, I can't fail. If I don't apply myself, I won't look ridiculous. It stopped me from doing a lot of things. It stopped me from achieving a lot of success. And what I found was that relationship with failure ultimately led to me failing by default. Did you guys know that the rocket, when it takes off and leaves Earth and enters the atmosphere on its way to the moon, it's failing its way to the moon? If you think about it, it's always course correcting. Just a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. 98% of the time, it's missing its mark, but it's consistently making those little fine-tuned adjustments, isn't it? Watch yourself next time you're driving down the road too. You don't ever just lock your hands on the steering wheel and drive in a straight line. You're going to notice you're doing this the entire drive. What if we were to take that same approach with our goals, with our life, with the things that we want to achieve? That, hey, failure is just a part of the process. And if I'm not failing, I'm not trying. I think personally, that would be a much more empowering relationship with failure. One that probably requires a little bit more effort, though. Would you agree? Now, last thing is I want to leave you guys with a phrase from Applied Faith by Napoleon Hill. Okay. You guys will recognize this from the part on replacing fear with hope. And he says that the fundamental lesson when dealing with fear is learning to set it aside. He says that your mind attracts anything that it dwells upon. So refuse to think about the things that you don't want and feed your mind with pictures of the things that you want. There is nothing more important. Okay, this is good. There is nothing more important than learning the art of keeping your mind focused upon the things, conditions, and circumstances that you really want. He says that it's an art. I think that it's really more like a skill that you can cultivate with practice. Either way, he says there's nothing more important than learning the art of keeping your mind focused upon the things, conditions, and circumstances that you really want. And how do you do that? You got to discipline your mind. Discipline your mind. I often say that if you can't control your thinking, if you can't control your mind will control you. And if you're allowing your mind to control you, look out, my friend, you're in for some trouble, at least in my experience. Okay. So, any questions, any comments? Anything come up for you guys? Anybody really like battling their paradigm right now? Thinking, oh my gosh. Karate chop that paradigm in half, eh? Okay, guys. Well, hey, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy Friday. Enjoy your weekend. We'll take care and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.